सहनो भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। Humble prostrations to one and all present here. In the 9th chapter, now we are discussing verse number 4 and verse number 5. After having glorified the knowledge, now Bhagavan gives this highest knowledge, the knowledge of spirituality. So what does Bhagavan say? Bhagavan says in the 4th verse, Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. Arjuna, I pervade the whole world in my unmanifest form. So Bhagavan, if you are pervading the whole world, what is your relationship with the world? Did you transform yourself to become the world? So now to answer this question, Bhagavan makes 3 statements. So what are the 3 statements? Statement number 1, Matsthani sarva bhutani. All beings exist in me. Nacha aham teshu avasthitah. I don't exist in them. Nacha matsthani bhutani. They also don't exist in me. Pashyame yogamaishwaram. Arjuna, look at my divine Maya. So here, in the 3 statements we have discussed in the last class, statement number 1 and statement number 3 are contradicting to each other. All beings exist in me, says statement number 1. They don't exist in me, says statement number 2. So in the last class we have seen, statement number 1 has been made from transactional standpoint, vyavaharika drishti, and statement number 3 is made from the absolute standpoint, paramarthika drishti. From the transactional standpoint, the world exists in the Lord. From the absolute standpoint, the world doesn't exist in the Lord because, in the first place, the world itself doesn't exist. This world is an illusory world. So now, in the following discussion, Bhagavan does not take up the topic of illusory nature of the world. This topic is not taken up because this information that world is an illusion is of no use to us. To do sadhana in this world, we have to make use of the world. The purpose of the world is to take us to the Lord. So therefore, since we have to make use of the world, the illusory nature of the world is not at all discussed. So from now on, the topic discussed is from the transactional standpoint. Bhagavan is coming down to our level and discussing the matter. So what does Bhagavan say? See verse number 5, second line. Bhuta bhrit nacha bhutastha mama atma bhuta bhavanaha. Mama atma, myself. Bhagavan says, bhuta bhavanaha. All the beings, they are born in me. Bhuta bhavanaha. Bhuta bhrit. All beings exist in me. All the beings are born in me. All the beings exist in me. All the beings dissolve in me. Now that line is not mentioned here. We have to add that. Bhuta bhavanaha, bhuta bhrit. Bhagavan is also the bhuta layasthanam. But then nacha bhutastaha. I don't exist in them. I don't exist in them means I am not affected by them. All the beings are born in me. They are sustained in me. They dissolve in me, but I am not affected by them. Bhagavan, you say you are the supporter and all beings are the supported. You are the adhara and all beings are adheya, the supported. But Bhagavan, how is it possible that the supporter is not affected by the supported? The supporter will always be affected by the supported. For example, there is a glass and in that glass I pour water. Glass is the adhara, the supporter. Water is the adheya, the supported. So then what happens? The water wets the glass. The supported affects the supporter. How can you say that you are supporting the whole world and you are unaffected by the world, by the happenings of the world? How can you say that? So in order to answer that question, the next verse is given. Let us chant the next verse, verse number 6. Yatha kashasthito nityam vayus sarvatra go mahan tatha sarvani bhutani madstani tyupadharaya. Once again. Yatha kashasthito nityam vayus sarvatra go mahan tatha sarvani bhutani madstani tyupadharaya. Yes. How can supporter remain unaffected by the supported? So this question is answered with an example. So what is the example? Yatha, just like Vayuhu, the wind, the air. What is the nature of this wind, this air? Sarvatragaha. It is present everywhere. It is all pervading. Mahan, very powerful. So all pervading, all powerful Vayu, wind, air. Sthitaha, it exists. Where does it exist? Yatha akasha sthitaha. This wind exists in the space. Akasha means space. Nityam, always. Just like this all-pervading wind, all-powerful wind exists in the space. In the same way, tatha sarvani bhutani matsthani. All beings exist in me. So just like the wind exists in space, in the same way, all beings are existing in me. So here, in this example, what is the supporter? Akasha, space is the supporter. And what is the supported? Vayu, wind is the supported. So the wind is supported by the space. In the same way, all beings are supported by me. So now, there is a supporter-supported relationship. What is Bhagavan trying to prove here? The point is, though the space is supporting the wind, the space is absolutely unaffected by the wind. This is the point. Now, not only about the wind, all beings, all things, everything exists in space. It is not just wind, everything. Generally, this example is given in our scriptures. The highest reality is compared with all-pervading space. Things exist in space. So therefore, point number one, the space is a supporter of all things. Point number one. Point number two, space is unseen, things are seen. All the things are tangible, they are perceived, but not space. So, space is an unseen supporter of all things. Space is an unseen supporter. Point number three, space is a non-interfering supporter. All things exist in space. All those things have got their own properties. Smell, taste, color, form, etc. And what is the nature of space? The space does not interfere with these properties. So space is a supporter. It's an unseen supporter. And also, space is a non-interfering supporter. And also, space is an unaffected supporter. The objects are there in space, but the presence or absence of these objects, even the modification of these objects, does not affect the space. So therefore we can say space is also an unaffected supporter. So space is an unaffected, non-interfering, unseen supporter of all objects. This space in Sanskrit is called Akasha. So what is Akasha? Avakasham dadati iti Akasha. The one which gives space for things to exist is called space. Avakasham dadati iti Akasha. Anyway, so space is a non-interfering, unaffected, unseen supporter of all objects. In the same way, the pure consciousness also is a supporter. It's an unseen supporter. Consciousness supports the whole world, but it is unseen. Why is it unseen? It is unseen because it is a seer, it is the observer. Observer can never be seen. So it's an unseen supporter. And this consciousness is a non-interfering supporter. It just allows things to happen without interfering in it. Non-interfering supporter, and also it is an unaffected supporter. Whatever happens in the world doesn't affect it. Another example which we can give is the movie screen. The movie screen supports the entire movie happenings, things, beings, and situations in the movie. Movie screen is a supporter. It's an unseen supporter. In the movie, we don't see the screen. It is a non-interfering supporter. The screen does not interfere with the movie happenings. And also, the screen is an unaffected supporter. The screen is not affected by the happenings in the movie. There can be fire, there can be flood, but the screen is unaffected. So this can be another example. Now see, this example here, the example of space and objects, wind, etc. This example has a defect. Every example will have some or the other defects. But we have to take only that aspect which are necessary. Whatever example we take, every example will have a defect. So what is the defect of this example? The space supporting the objects. What is the defect? The defect is the supporter is an inert entity. Is a jadavastu. This is a defect of this example. Bhagwan, who is supporting the whole world, Bhagwan is not jada, he is not insentient, he is not inert, he is a sentient entity, a conscious entity, a living entity, a knowing entity, an entity which is aware. So therefore, this becomes one defect of this example. Another defect of this example is the whole world which is supported is an illusion. The supporter alone is a reality. So therefore, the supporter and the supported, they don't enjoy the same plane of reality, the same level of reality. One should be real, the other should be an illusion. Only then the example can match. For example, the best example for this will be the waker and the dream. The waker supports the entire dream world. The waker is an unseen supporter. The waker is a non-interfering supporter. The waker is an unaffected supporter, but also waker is a sentient supporter. Also, the entire dream world is an illusion, but the waker is the reality. So that example becomes the perfect example in this situation. Here, what is the problem? There are two problems. The space supporting the objects, there are two defects in this example. Number one, Akasha is inert. It is not a sentient entity. Number two, Akasha, the space and the objects, they enjoy the same level of reality. Both are Panchamahabhutas. They enjoy the same level of reality. This is another defect. Actually, in the example, one should be real, the supporter should be real, and the supported should be an illusion. But that is not true in this example. In that movie screen example also it is true. In the movie screen example, yes, screen is a supporter, unseen supporter, non-interfering supporter, unaffected supporter, inert supporter. Now this is the defect of that example. The screen is inert. Yes, screen is real, the movie happenings are unreal. That aspect also is beautifully taken care in that example. But the defect in that movie screen example is the screen is inert. So therefore, whenever examples are given, don't pay attention to the defects of the example. Take only those aspects which matches with what Bhagavan is trying to prove here. So this way we have to analyze every example that is given. Now, how can this information be useful in our practical day-to-day life? So this verse can be used for meditation. So at the seat of meditation, when we sit with closed eyes, what do we find? We find the thoughts one after another, the train of thoughts we see in the mind. So what we have to do? So there are two entities we experience at the seat of meditation. Entity number one, the flow of thoughts. Entity number two, the observer of these thoughts. So who is this observer? This observer is pure consciousness. So how can we use this verse for our meditation? Use these statements. All thoughts exist in me, statement number one. I don't exist in them, meaning I am not affected by them, statement number two. They also don't exist in me because they are just flimsy, illusory. So at the seat of meditation, this is what we have to do. We have to observe our thought, witness our thoughts, firmly rooted in the observer of these thoughts, not getting identified by these thoughts, not getting carried away by these thoughts, just witnessing these thoughts, shifting our attention to the observer of these thoughts with a clear understanding that this observing consciousness, witnessing consciousness is none other than Bhagavan himself. In this way, if we can abide in consciousness, stay firmly rooted in consciousness, then what happens is the mind starts calming down. The mind slows down. The thoughts slowly start disappearing. And because our attention is upon consciousness, and because the nature of consciousness is Ananda Swarupa, it is infinite bliss. So more and more we are able to abide in this consciousness, the more and more we experience a divine peace, divine bliss, which is actually our own true nature. So this way, these verses can be extremely useful at the seat of meditation. Now, Bhagavan has said that I support all beings. All beings exist in me. I am the supporter. So naturally a question may come, Bhagavan, all the beings are born in you, they exist in you and they dissolve in you. On what basis are all these beings born in you? You say that you don't interfere. But then what is the basis of this birth? What is the basis of this birth and decay of these beings in you? So that question is answered in the next verse that we will see in the next class. Om सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।